What's going on, everybody? So it's almost been a year since I got my Steam Deck, and it's been an eventful one. There have been a lot of ups and downs with the device, but mostly good things. And I'm here to talk about the reality on how it is to own a Steam Deck and use it as your personal PC and also handheld gaming device. I'm a student and I also work full time, so I usually carry around a backpack or something or the other. I either have my sling bag or just a small backpack. And because I got a specific case for the Steam Deck where it protects the screen, I can basically just throw it in any of those bags and have no problem. And the Nintendo Switch has never been a device where I can put in my pocket because I like the original Nintendo Switch. I don't like the Nintendo Switch Lite because you can't hook it up to the television if you want that option. And that was the main selling point for me for the Nintendo Switch. But this isn't a review about the Nintendo Switch. Only mentioning it because the Steam Deck was highly inspired by the portability / home console aspect of these type of devices like the Ion Neo and the 1X player. So pretty much I carry it around everywhere. And it's a very sturdy device, so I don't worry about it hitting a wall or sitting on it by mistake or anything like that because it can handle a lot of weight. Even though it's like a prized possession, I have a cover on it, so it's even more reinforced. And yes, the Steam Deck is quite a big device. It's basically almost as long as my forearm and pretty much as wide as a standard laptop screen. So when you take this thing out, you're gonna get a lot of looks, some good, some bad. It is very ostentatious, especially if you have a white skin on the deck like I do. Take that sentence as you will. You'll definitely get a lot of questions and a lot of looks from people. And in college, I actually go to campus, so I do get a lot of stares. And if I'm not particularly feeling very social specific days, which most of the time I am, it's that moment where I have a sort of mini panic attack like, oh gosh, people are gonna notice, they're gonna look at me, they're gonna ask questions again. And so sometimes I just wanna sit down and have private time with a handheld gaming device and I don't want to be bothered. But half the time I am looked at for a while and there are people that ask questions. But there were a lot more people asking questions when the device was more rare, opposed to now where it's readily available to anyone, 2 weeks shipping tops. So yes, portability is questionable because of those small things. So if you're in a big city like New York City or LA, then prepare to get a lot of looks. So that pretty much gets portability out of the way. Now let's talk about performance, UI, convenience, etc. So the Steam Deck uses something called shader cache, and I made a video on it before stating how it could definitely be an issue for people that want good loading times and sometimes for your games to even start. And if those people have a 64 gigabyte version of the Steam Deck, you're pretty much screwed. And that is still true. There are certain third-party softwares that can free up space for shader cache, but you have to kind of do your research to see which one is best. I don't have a particular one to recommend because I just don't want to get rid of shaders. I don't want to risk not being able to play my game or reinstalling my game because I messed up some kind of file or now a file's corrupted because of a third-party software. There's all kinds of stuff that go into that, which is a big headache for people that just want to pick up a handheld and play Shadows of Mordor portable. So yeah, shaders has been a huge headache, but the headache completely went away when I finally got the guts to replace my 256 gigabyte eMMC with a 1 terabyte SSD. So suffice to say, I don't really need to worry about shaders anymore. But opening up the Steam Deck and replacing those things was extremely nerve-wracking. So if you have shaky hands, you might actually mess something up in there. So make sure to either get somebody that can do it with steady hands or meditate before you do it. And pretty much that solved all of my issues with the shaders. And I think Valve is sort of chilling with the whole shader update thing because I don't see a lot of shader updates anymore. What can help it is going into the preferences in each game and turning off the automatic update option. So it won't automatically update shaders. But there was a point where you turn that off and it automatically updates shaders like every single time. So I think Valve actually fixed that because it's not so much of an issue anymore. Thank God. But the first 6 months was terrible with shaders specifically. Playing games was very fun, but then you start up a game and it's like, oh, you need an update, or you're connected to the internet and you can't play the game until the update is done. done. So Lord forbid that you're connected to the internet at the time. So if you stop the update, you're kind of going to have trouble playing the game if it's required to have an update and it notifies sort of the game that you need an update before you play. So it's with all these updates and shaders in the first 6 months at least. So yeah, the only way to get rid of the shader headache is to install a bigger internal memory, such as 1 terabyte. If you can find it at a good price, I recommend getting 2 terabytes so you just never have to worry about it. You will need probably 1,000 purchased games just to reach the limit of the 1 terabyte. And I put a lot of games into the 1 terabyte because there's so many games I can't live without, like Resident Evil 2 Remake, Prototype 1 and 2. So I put all of those smaller games in there. So I pretty much have like 40 games in my internal SSD. And besides that, if you watch my pimped out Steam Deck video, I also bought miniature SSDs to just hook onto the back of the Steam Deck while I'm playing. And that's a USB-C to USB-C SSD. So it has up to 800 megabits per second only when you use USB-C. When you use the attachment of USB-A, then it becomes like 80 to 100 megabits per second. So there is a limitation with USB-A if you're using an external hard drive or SSD, and just note that. So if you're not getting the speeds you want, it's because you're not using USB-C specifically, you're using USB-A, and there's a limit to even the 3.1 USB-A, and just keep a note of that. So I use the USB-C over USB-C SSD, that's a mouthful, to get the speeds I want with an external hard drive. And nobody has made a USB-C specific dock yet, so you're most likely going to have to connect it to USB-A if you want to charge the Steam Deck at the same time of using a low power SSD. But it is low power, so it'll last pretty much the same amount of time if you're using that Crucial X6 SSD I recommended. And I think that is one of the best external SSDs for the Steam Deck, in my opinion, because it can go to higher bits per second, and also it's fully portable, unlike the JSOC's docked M.2 attachment. So yeah, memory has gotten better with upgrades, and I spent, I think, $180 for that internal 1 terabyte. So now let's go to performance. Well, that's a tricky question because there has been a lot of updates where the performance has gotten worse and the shaders for some reason sometimes get corrupted or something like that, where a game would work for a while for you, like say Doom 2016, and then all of a sudden with a new SteamOS update or a game update even, the SteamOS or the game isn't up to date with each other. So the game doesn't quite work as well as it used to. And that's a little frustrating because, you know, you have certain small expectations when it comes to playing a game. But with the later updates, I'd say a lot of the games that haven't worked very well are working better. So Valve is still working on that. It is tough to make proprietary PCs because when it comes to a lot of laptops, there's a ton of people that have issues with specific huge mainstream titles, and the developers just don't know what to do because they optimize the game specifically for custom PCs or custom PC parts. And then you have proprietary PCs like Asus gaming laptops and Alienware laptops. And all of a sudden, the game has completely changed for these developers and they need to make updates for specific laptops, and it doesn't really work like that. So Nvidia and AMD need to throw out these updates that potentially help these games. And most of the time it works, but some of the time it just breaks the game forever. Like say Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition. That game still doesn't work on my laptop, and my laptop was $1,700 at the time, and that was quite a bit ago, and it still doesn't work with my say 8-year-old laptop. So you might never see support for specific laptops, proprietary PCs, but with the Steam Deck there's constant support, and it is so mainstream. I hope they never change the specs because I just want things to work better. Software is always better than hardware. That's why I'm a software engineer, because I believe that software is way more important than hardware. You could get the beefiest Titan X and it still won't work because there's specific software that isn't compatible with it. So hardware most of the time is just all talk. Software is really what matters, and the Nintendo Switch on its 6th or 7th year, I'm losing track, has shown that it really doesn't matter. You can just optimize a game to the point that it's playable, and it's just that because the software says so. Adding Linux on top of it, and the fact that Linux is way more fluid than Windows. Linux almost 100% of the time does what it's supposed to do, but the only thing you have to know specific codes and softwares, but it is all or almost all open source. So it's just a playground for people that love to tinker tinker, and tinkering is half the fun, especially for me. The game is the reward. So the Steam Deck is, I'd say, for people that love to tinker, if you want to tinker. But if you don't want to tinker, it's also for those people because it has so much third-party software support and mainstream support at this point that you can just go in blind and you'll just play the games you want to as long as you purchase the games that are great on deck. And I know there's a lot of people that say games that are verified aren't working for them, but I've actually never run into that issue where I started a verified game and it just didn't work. Maybe I started up and it doesn't work and then I restart the Steam Deck, and just like a PC, sometimes it needs to install Microsoft Framework or something like that, so you need to restart the Steam Deck. And I'd recommend when you install a new game, if it's not working, restart your Steam Deck. It'll probably work after that. And going into that software topic, let's talk emulators. I recently sold my Nintendo Switch, but I still have my game. So I didn't really know quite what to do with the games, and I like to keep it simple, and I wanted it all in one device. I'm pretty simplistic when it comes to devices. I like stuff all in one. I like stuff as small as possible, all in one, as portable as possible. So I keep everything on the Steam Deck, and I'm using an emulator to play my Nintendo Switch games, and about 80% of my games work right now on the Steam Deck. And I'm also using the emulator for other consoles and other portable systems, and I've got to say it is the most fluid and simplest way to play emulation games that I've ever seen. I've had emulators on laptops, netbooks, tablets. I had an NVIDIA Shield portable once. I think I posted an old video throwing some shade at Nintendo Switch and saying that I don't need it because I have an NVIDIA Shield portable, and that was just a troll video. I wasn't serious. But yes, after playing Bayonetta 3 and seeing the horrible resolution on that game and seeing how disgusting it looked, and it pretty much didn't play that well. A lot of people are saying Bayonetta 3 plays just fine. It does not. It plays pretty terrible. Once you take out a monster, the game drops to 30 and below. So I'm playing that game on the Steam Deck right now, and it's a little rough, but the resolution doesn't change. The resolution stays the same, and that's all I wanted, just for the game to look as good as part 1 and 2. At least. So emulating on the Steam Deck is extremely fun, and I love it. And it has been the most fun I've had with the Steam Deck. I think that if you're getting the Steam Deck for emulation, do it. But if you have more money to burn and you want to get anything for emulation, I think the Steam Deck is good when it comes to controls. But I think if you don't want to go too big, you can get like the iNeo 2 or the GPD Win 3, and they will probably play things better because some models have better CPUs and they play, say, PlayStation 3 games better. But if you want to play like unplayable PlayStation 3 games on an emulator, then yeah, get those $1,000 or $700 portable PCs that are probably smaller than a Steam Deck, but they're not as ergonomic as the Steam Deck is, and they won't exactly have that mainstream support that the Steam Deck has. So if you want to use any portable device for anything but emulation, the Steam Deck is probably the way to go if you want the smoothest, most seamless experience. And if you want something that's going to guaranteed get the support that it deserves, and I'm not saying that Valve is known for this over time, but it seems like they are going really hard on the Steam Deck's support, and I would almost guarantee that they're going to continue support in the next at least 3 years. But that's not to say that the GPD Win 3 or the 1X player or iNeo is not going to get continued support over the next few years, because handheld gaming is getting a lot more popular now more than ever, and that's saying a lot. Not to make this video too long, let's move over to the battery life. So a lot of people complain about the battery life being an hour and 30 minutes. That is very much the case. If you really aren't using a power bank because you're psychotic or something and you want the battery to last longer, I suggest you lower the resolution to Switch-like resolution, or if the game has dynamic resolution, turn that on. Put the graphics to low to medium and change the refresh rate to 40 or below, and you'll get pretty much 2.5 to 4.5 hours average on most games. And I tested this out with Doom 2016, and I got about 5 hours and 30 minutes with Doom 2016, putting it to Switch-like detail and resolution. But even with Switch-like detail and resolution, it still looked better than the actual Switch port, and also it was still 60 FPS. But if you want to put a game like Doom 2016 to Switch-like details and 30 FPS, then you're going to get about 6 hours with Doom 2016, which is actually longer than Doom 2016's expected battery life on any Switch device. It gets around the same amount of time as the Nintendo Switch if you really wanted it to. But with more demanding titles like Control and all those games that you cannot play on the Nintendo Switch, there's a reason why they can't play on the Nintendo Switch. It'll probably last like 2.5 hours max, and it'll look like complete dog crap. With the Steam Deck, it looks incredible and it lasts about 2 hours with control. If you're putting it at 40 hertz, probably 2.5 hours, and it looks incredible and it plays incredible. So I think when it comes to battery life, it's all about realistic expectation. When it comes to a device like the Steam Deck and the other portable handheld PCs, you have to have realistic expectations as to what can play what with how much power can it play it and what is available for specific manufacturers. And you're just not going to see that kind of power when it comes to battery unless you want a battery that explodes like with the Note 7. And if you don't want a battery that's experimental and that's probably going to crap out on you in like 2 months anyway, then you have to deal with something that's very stable, like the Steam Deck's battery. But I'll even go as far as to say you can play emulated games and they look a lot better than Nintendo Switch games. I remember playing Doom 2016 on the Steam Deck and it was mind-boggling, mind-blowing. Anything that has to do with the mind, it was. And then I went back to Nintendo Switch and I almost threw up because the frames were horrible and it looked terrible compared to actual PC performance that's on the Steam Deck. It's not optimized for the Steam Deck. It is the actual game playing with the intended graphics, intended frames. And of course, compared to the actual game opposed to a Nintendo Switch port, systems like the Ion Neo and the Steam Deck are going to look so much better. But the thing about the Steam Deck is that its battery is going to improve over time because the software is going to improve. So all in all, there have been some annoyances with the Steam Deck. And I would say most of it hasn't been when I was playing in handheld. Most of it has been when I have tried to dock it, especially during the first 6 months. The first 6 months, trying to dock the Steam Deck is like trying to get a dog to go to the vet or trying to get a kid to go to a dentist. Almost impossible to have a consistent, good experience trying to dock this thing. So when the official dock came out, 2 weeks after I got my JSOX dock, Valve released an update for their official Steam Deck dock. And so the JSOX dock just didn't want to work. I had to actually update the firmware by going to a website and installing it manually. It's so annoying. And that was the point where I was a little fed up with the Steam Deck updates and how irresponsible Valve was being with the consideration of third-party products like the JSOX docks. But I would say since version 3.1, I forgot exactly which version it was, but since the optimized dock update, my experience with the JSOX dock has been a lot more seamless. But I actually still can't get the JSOX dock to work on my Hisense 4K television, and I know that Hisense is pretty cheap, but for some reason, the bottom half of the image always glitches out and blacks out most of the time when I'm playing a game. So it blacks out for about 2 seconds every 20 seconds. So it's pretty much unplayable with the JSOX dock on my television. So I had to get a 4K wire and I just plugged that in and I got it from Best Buy. And on the other side of that wire, there's an extension for a power supply. So there's a power supply, HDMI, and then USB-C. And it's pretty much just one cable and I plug it in. But the bad thing is that I can't use my external SSDs on my television till this day. So I just use my external SSDs on my portable 144 hertz monitor that I also showed in the Pimp My Steam Deck video. And that monitor is a godsend. It's incredible. I already talked all about that. So if you want to check out that video, I'll provide the link at the end of this video. So yeah, besides shaders and actually docking the system, I'd say the Steam Deck is an almost perfect portable system. All things considered, because every system has a downside. The Nintendo Switch almost doesn't have any downsides until you get into the game. Then you're just like, wow, this looks like dog crap. And then you get games like No More Heroes 3 that's optimized for the Nintendo Switch. And that's when you realize that yes, this hardware is not fit for the software. But I feel like the Steam Deck is fit for its software. I feel like they're a perfect match and games look incredible on it. Most of the time I do play games at 1080p on my monitor or TV, and I get about 30 to 40 FPS. I did optimize games like Resident Evil 2 Remake, and it runs at 60 FPS, 1080p, but I turned down the resolution 90%, so it's like there's a difference, but you can't really tell, and it still looks really good. I've always played Elden Ring on the TV because that's just the only way I can focus on it. And yeah, the Steam Deck is still surprising me after almost a year. And I think the same goes for Nintendo Switch, but the thing about the Nintendo Switch when it first came out, you didn't have a lot of games available for it. So you didn't quite know what it was capable of because you were getting games like Skyrim and Xenoblade Chronicles promised at a further date. And then you get games like Mario Odyssey, which is not that demanding at all. And so you don't really have a realistic gauge how powerful it is. And by the time Doom 2016 came out, it was pretty much too late because most of us Nintendo Switch fans were already fully committed. So when Doom 2016 came out and it just looked like mud, but you could still kind of see the game in there, you were just too committed to see the truth and to see that, yeah, this hardware is not fit for the software. The Nintendo Switch's eyes are a lot bigger than its stomach. But with the Steam Deck, I feel like it's appropriate. I feel like the eyes are the same size or almost as big as the stomach is, and that's a big stomach for the Steam Deck. Don't know why I'm using that metaphor. I am in love with the Steam Deck for many reasons, and I'd say mostly for the fact that I'm a tinkerer and getting specific titles to work better because I put in the work is most of the fun for me, but also playing the games and having a really good time and the reliability of the games is a lot of the fun for me. And I put it out there that I actually sold my Nintendo Switch after playing Bayonetta 3. I just refuse to accept the fact that Nintendo released a game that looks like Bayonetta 3, and that game was so hyped up, and I personally just didn't like it. That's why I did not do a review on it. I thought I would like it, but then playing it more, just the pop-ins, the performance, the visuals were all muddy, just like every other Nintendo Switch game. It just looked like a 10-year-old game that just came out yesterday. But I completed the game on the Steam Deck, and I had a much better time with it on that platform. And for right now, anyway, the Steam Deck is my only handheld system. So say what you will, but I am completely content with having that as my only handheld system and my only gaming device, really, because a lot of PlayStation exclusives and Xbox exclusives are coming out for the system. So yeah, I am no longer a Nintendo Switch owner. I sold it for pretty much the same price I got it for. And I thought buying a Nintendo Switch OLED would rekindle that love for the system, but I just kept ignoring it for the Steam Deck. And after I kept modding the deck so easily, I added a plugin called Vibrant Deck, and I mentioned that in my pimping out video. And it pretty much makes the Steam Deck look like an OLED screen. It makes the dark darker and it makes the colors more vibrant, but except it comes with all the extra details that you can't get on the Nintendo Switch. So even though on that OLED screen, games like Resident Evil 5 looked really good, the details for about 90% of the games, even Super Mario 3D World, looked very choppy on that OLED screen. And the fact that most of the games ran at about 480p on a 720 screen that was very tiny at first when the first model came out and blown up on the OLED screen made it look so much worse. It just didn't look very good. And the grass was actually greener on the other side with the Steam Deck. Playing Nintendo Switch games on the Steam Deck is insurmountably better. And the main reason why is because you can switch. See what I did there? The resolution on the emulator to docked or handheld mode. So you can play the docked graphics on your Steam Deck. So by default, it looks a lot better than a Nintendo Switch version. And that alone just made me realize I had no reason to keep the Nintendo Switch. I was just ignoring it. It was collecting dust. And I figured I may as well sell it now, because if I just forget about it, either it's going to break or it's just going to lose value. And they're readily available everywhere if I ever need to pick it back up again. And I know that The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is coming out, but here's the thing. Bayonetta 3 was an exclusive. Bayonetta 2 looked 1,000 times better than Bayonetta 3, and it is better than Bayonetta 3 in my opinion. Breath of the Wild and Bayonetta 2 have something in common. They were both made for the Wii U, so they were made for actual consoles and ported over. They were made for different architectures. They weren't specifically exclusive to the system. A lot of Nintendo Switch exclusives don't look that great. Astro Chain is an exception, and even that sometimes looks very simple compared to other games with its cell shading style. I know that cell shading requires a lot of processing power and stuff like that, but it still had very jagged lines most of the time, and when you docked it, it looked very jagged. And playing Astral Chain on the Steam Deck, you can play a docked mode, so it just looks extremely clean while playing it handheld. But I think that Tears of the Kingdom is going to have a lot of software and hardware issues when it comes out. I know there's a lot of hype for it, and they're selling a lot of Nintendo Switches, but they're only selling the title. They're not selling an actual game that's going to perform very well, most likely, because it's not a ported Wii U title. Most games that work really well on the Nintendo Switch are ported titles. And it's something about that transfer from Wii U to the Nintendo Switch that makes the games run even better, and for some reason they can build on top of that. It's probably just based on the hardware they had at the time and how they were just thinking, of optimization at that time, opposed to how they think about optimization on Nintendo Switch, because for some reason it is supposedly better and a lot easier to develop for the Nintendo Switch than it was for the Wii U, but I'm not getting that from titles like No More Heroes 3 and Bayonetta 3 and how incredibly ugly they look and how badly they perform. So I'm assuming that Tears of the Kingdom, since it's an exclusive, is going to perform just as bad. Titles that are just hyped up and they're just selling the title. They're not selling a quality game. And it even seems like they just build on top of the original world, which I don't know why a lot of people aren't talking about it, but that in itself is a disappointment, that they're just building on top of the world, building a sky area. And sky areas, how exciting they could be, right? Because Skyward Sword was such a massive success. I'm going to wait till a few reviews come out, and I think that if Tears of the Kingdom, and I'm not hoping it's bad, but I think most likely it will definitely not be as good as Breath of the Wild. So I think if Tears of the Kingdom is not as good as Breath of the Wild, even if it's still a great game, that's going to be the final nail in the coffin for Nintendo Switch, because it really shows that they've gone nowhere. They've actually taken a step back with the software and the hardware, because they specifically think about the battery life and they don't think about the experience. Now with the Steam Deck, I don't think about the battery life, and not a lot of people should. They should just think about the smoothest experience that you can have with a game. And playing games like Resident Evil 5 at 120 FPS or 4K at 60 is the best experience ever for me. Playing older titles that the Nintendo Switch plays at 24 frames per second at 720p, playing it on the Steam Deck at 4K at 60 FPS, seeing that stark difference of performance over battery life, it makes the system so much more valuable to me, because I know that they're still going to push titles beyond their actual limits, regardless of what it does to the battery. And with the Nintendo Switch, for some reason they want all these games to last about 4 hours, when I could do 3 hours just fine. You could just ramp up the resolution and FPS. I don't know why they don't do that. Why they don't make Resident Evil 5 optimized to 60 FPS, or games like Doom 2016 have dynamic resolution and try to push for 60 or 40 even. And I think the answer to that is because the hardware and the software just doesn't let them. They don't have that freedom to give you the experiences you truly want portably, and it doesn't give you that AAA aesthetic and performance that you really actually want. It gives you sort of a pipe dream, and then it gives you something to settle with. And I feel like all of the Nintendo Switch games were something I settled with. I don't feel like there was something I actually wanted for a very, very long time. Handheld. When I played Doom 2016 handheld, it almost didn't look like the same game. But I knew it was the game with all the content and stuff, but all that content was sort of an idea, and you just get this muddied picture with this half-rated performance. And yeah, I'm ragging on the Nintendo Switch a lot, but I feel like when something is outdated, it's outdated. And I feel like a lot of people were ragging on the Wii U because as soon as it came out, it was outdated. The Nintendo Switch is the same exact thing. Sure, it's portable, but there are other portable systems now that are readily available to you. And sure, they're not at Best Buy, or they're not at PC Richards. Oh wait, PC Richards was shut down because Amazon was too good. Well, they're not at Radio Shack. Oh wait, Radio Shack was shut down because Amazon was too good. See, the trend is that most people get their stuff online anyway, and so it doesn't matter if they're in the stores or not. Those handheld systems are still readily available, like the Steam Deck. You can still get it in about 2 weeks if you have the money. But not only that, you can get all the games that you've had already on Steam, because most people have PCs anyway. My little brother recently put together a $3,000 PC, and he's going to have those Steam games. He's going to have those cloud saves. Once he gets a Steam Deck, you know what's going to change? Nothing. That's the reason why he never got a Nintendo Switch. Most, if not all of my family members use PC as well as consoles. So that means that a lot of them have Steam accounts, which means that the Steam Deck is way more accessible to just the average gamer, opposed to Nintendo Switch that makes you pay Switch taxes, makes you buy a downgraded version for a more expensive price because they optimized it in a certain way. They didn't optimize it to the point that it's better. They just optimized it to the point that the battery life is good enough to call it a portable system and a portable experience. So yeah, this started out as a year-in Steam Deck throwaway video like everybody else, but this turned into why I sold my Nintendo Switch for a Steam Deck. And I didn't sell the Nintendo Switch to buy the Steam Deck. I sold it because of the Steam Deck specifically. There's no other way around it. I'm not biased. I just think the experience on the Steam Deck is so much better. And it's exactly what I was expecting the Nintendo Switch to be like. But yes, what does the future hold for the Steam Deck? And will they make a Steam Deck 2? I think the Steam Deck 2 is coming out next year, 2024. I don't think it's coming out 2023. I think they still have a lot of features to experiment with on their current Steam Deck, and I think that is valuable time that they should not waste. This year is very important to Valve, more than last year, because now they're starting to get more sales and they're readily available in multiple countries. So yeah, I think the future of Steam Deck is very bright, but I also think the future of Linux is very bright. I think there have been plenty of handheld systems that is nothing new, but they are trying something new with a handheld Linux device, and I think that is brilliant, and I can't wait to see what else they have in store. My predictions, I think they're going to make a slightly smaller Steam Deck with a way better fan and battery, but I don't think they're going to change the performance, especially since they kind of confirmed that they're not going to change the performance. So I don't know why people are still asking for that when it's probably not going to happen. I think that if they do change anything, they should upgrade the CPU just a little, to the point that you don't really see a difference in all the games that you're playing, but you do see a difference with emulation, processing, background, apps, multitasking, stuff like that. So it can actually help with multitasking, because right now, for some titles like Uncharted, if you even go back into the home screen, that would crash your Steam Deck because the CPU or RAM just can't handle it. And it's putting everything it has into this game. And then all of a sudden you throw another assignment at it and it just can't handle it. It has a mental breakdown. So I do think that the CPU needs to be upgraded for that processing speed and capability. And if they truly want it to be a smoother experience with the UI and the games, they can't just keep throwing software at it, because if you keep throwing features at it, you're going to have even more features to process on top of that. So I think they do need a more powerful CPU, at least tweak it a little bit, because it sometimes isn't a smooth process if it's your first time playing and you think that you could just do whatever you want to do and check out your library. But it has gotten better over the course of this year. They could find some other way, but I think they have reached their limit with the software. There are so many features, it's impossible to count at this point. But I absolutely cannot wait to see what else Valve is going to give us next year and the year after that. And for now, I think the Steam Deck is a perfect stepping stone for handheld PCs in the future. And it's a building block for a lot of companies out there that are also making handheld PCs. And I truly do believe that it has revolutionized the handheld gaming industry, just like the Game Boy did. It's taken that step forward and given us extreme power in the palm of our hands, or the power of the sun in the palm of our hands. And I'm continuing to have a blast with this system. And I really thought that after I got rid of my Nintendo Switch that I would miss it. But I just keep looking towards the future instead of hoping and waiting for Nintendo to deliver on something they probably can't deliver on. And I think the final nail in the coffin for me was the fact that they weren't able to port, or Square Enix wasn't able to port, or they didn't have enough time or money to port all of the Kingdom Hearts games to the Nintendo Switch. And those are the games I really, really wanted ported, because now I have all of the Kingdom Hearts games readily available with no updates, no shader cache needed, just simply the game in the palm of my hands, and I'm able to play it for about 5 hours. And that's everything I wanted from the Nintendo Switch. I just wanted those beloved games in the palm of my hands. And I actually really wanted Halo. And I remember when people were talking about Microsoft potentially working with Nintendo, and yes, they're going to give the Nintendo Switch Call of Duty for the next 10 years. I don't know what they're planning with that, but I'm not paying no super mega premium edition for Call of Duty Modern Warfare, 50 gig download. No, I just enjoy playing Modern Warfare 1 and 2 on my Steam Deck at 120 FPS or 60 FPS handheld, and I'm perfectly content with that. I don't need some game that has a 20 gigabyte update for the pores on somebody's face. So no thank you, Nintendo Switch, or whatever they're going to come out with. Nintendo Switch Pro, Nintendo Switch 2, Nintendo Switch Plus is my guess that they're going to call it, because that just rolls off the tongue. Or Nintendo Switch Premium, or Nintendo Switch 4K. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to buy it. And the Nintendo Switch was the first Nintendo system I ever purchased for myself and fully got into for 5 years straight. This is the longest I've ever been into a Nintendo system and Nintendo exclusives in my entire life. And it's because of the portability. But after a certain time, I stopped going back to Mario Odyssey. I stopped playing all those exclusives. I just really wasn't interested in the exclusives. I'm not really a Mario guy. I only went back to Breath of the Wild twice. So I finished it the first time, and then I went back a second time for the DLC, and I never really played the DLC. So yeah, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's a very lengthy one, or should I say it's a very lengthy deck video. And thank you guys so much for watching. And let me know how you're enjoying your time with your Steam Deck after a year, or how long you've had it, and what exactly do you think is going to happen in the next year or so with Valve and the Steam Deck? What do you predict the future of the Steam Deck is going to be like? And besides that, hope you guys are having a great day. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.